Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Victor, Valgavoth Seneschal. It is a 3 mana 3/3 human warlock, and its eerie ability has quite a lot of words in it. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, surveil 2 if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, each opponent discards a card, and if it's the third time, put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. I have built this commander to be a flicker discard combo deck that focuses on its first and second resolve trigger to surveil into cards that you actually need, and to make your opponent's discard to slow them down in the game. Once we have worked our way to one of our few infinite combos, we will go for the win, and our opponents most likely won't have any interaction in hand, because we made them discard all of their cards. So once your play group knows this card, you will definitely need to protect Victor, which is why we play cards like Lightning Greaves, a 2 mana artifact equipment. An equipped creature has haste and shroud, and you can equip it for 0. We play Shard Mage's Rescue, a 1 mana enchantment aura with flash, and as long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchanted creature is hexproof, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1. This powerful protection enchantment is widely known in standard currently, but it also does a lot of work in this deck because you will get one of your eerie triggers. We play Flare of Fortitude, a 4 mana instant, and you may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. And until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. We have quite a few expendable small non-token white creatures that we can easily sacrifice into Flare of Fortitude. And this card is also really important for us because it protects all of our permanents, so it can also protect a few of our key piece enchantments. We play Apostle's Blessing, a 1 Phyrexian white and 1 generic instant, and target artifact or creature you control gains protection from artifacts or from the color of your choice until end of turn. Being able to pay the 1 with Phyrexian mana puts you in a very comfortable spot, simply because you don't need a lot of mana for this very powerful protection spell, and you can also protect one of your artifacts, which is needed for one of your infinite combos. We play Karya's Ghost Form, a 1 mana enchantment aura, and enchant creature or planeswalker you control. When enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. This is an enchantment, so you will get another eerie trigger for protecting your Victor. We play Not Dead After All, a 1 mana instant. Until end of turn, target creature you control gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and then create a Wicked Roll token attached to it. It is worth mentioning that the Wicked Roll token is an enchantment, so you will get another eerie trigger. Once Victor is protected, we want to generate a lot of Cardadvantage, which we will do with the following cards. For example, Bandit's Talent, a 2 mana enchantment class, and on the first chapter, when Bandit's Talent enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. On level 2, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 of your cards in hand, they lose 2 life. And on the 3rd level, at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 of your cards in hand. Not only do we make our opponents discard a bunch of cards, it will also give us another eerie trigger, and level 3 can be a lot of card advantage for us. We play Waste Not, a 2 mana enchantment, and whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black to your mana pool. And most importantly, whenever an opponent discards a non-creature non-land card, draw a card. Waste Not is definitely one of your key pieces, so it is worth protecting this card. We play Mesa Enchantress, a 3 mana 0/2, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. Due to us making our opponents discard a bunch of cards, we also play Gif's Grimoire, a 4 mana artifact, and whenever an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. We play Phyrexian Arena, a 3 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. We play Black Market Connections, another enchantment for 3 mana, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose 1 or more. Create a treasure token and you lose 1 life, draw a card, you lose 2 life, or create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling, and you lose 3 life. Of course, we play a lot of interaction, so we play Anguished Unmaking, a 3 mana instant, exile target non-land permanent, and you lose 3 life. We play Darksteel Mutation, a 2 mana enchantment aura. An enchanted creature is an insect artifact creature with base power and toughness 0/1 and has indestructible, and it loses all other abilities, card types and creature types. We can shut down one of our opponent's commanders and also get an eerie trigger along the way. We play Grasp of Fate, a 3 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, exile up to one target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. We play the Meathook Massacre, a 2 mana and X legendary enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. We have to play a few edict effects because they are simply too powerful in Commander. Sheoldred's Edict, a 2 mana instant, choose 1. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature, each opponent sacrifices a creature token, or each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker. With that, we also play Sheoldred, a 5 mana 4/5 with Menace, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. This card also has a nice synergy with our commander, simply because for 5 mana we can exile it and return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. We can only activate this ability if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, which will be quite easy for us because we make our opponents discard a bunch of cards. And when the activated ability resolves, we will get the True Scriptures, an enchantment saga. For in the first chapter, for each opponent destroy up to one target creature or planeswalker that player controls. On the second chapter, each opponent discards 3 cards and then mills 3 cards. And on the third chapter, put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, exile it and then return it to the battlefield. Already just by entering from the True Scriptures we will get another Eerie trigger, and we are most likely looking at the third chapter to get a Rise of the Dark Realms, to get all of the creature cards back from our opponent's graveyards that we made them discard. Not only because the first Eerie trigger will make us surveil and put a bunch of cards into our graveyard, but also because our opponents might interact with our board, which leads us to playing a few recursion spells. So we play Starfield of Nyx, a 5 mana enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep you may return target enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield. Furthermore, as long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and toughness, each equal to its mana value. We also play Redress Fate, an 8 mana sorcery. Return all artifacts and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. This card also has Miracles, so for 4 mana we can cast it if it is the first card that we have drawn this turn, which is also quite a cool synergy with Victor, simply because he lets us surveil and we can manipulate the top of our library to miracle into Redress Fate. We also play Ghostly Dancers, a 5 mana 2/5 with flying, and when it enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand or unlock a locked door of a room you control. It also has an Eerie ability. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a free 1 White Spirit creature token with flying. We play Sevin's Reclamation, a 3 mana sorcery. Return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and if the spell was cast from a graveyard, you may copy the spell and may choose no targets for the copy. To be able to do so, it also has Flashback for 5 mana. We play Brilliant Restoration, a 7 mana sorcery. Return all artifacts and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. And another really cool card in this deck that has a really good synergy with Victor is Cleansing Meditation, a 3 mana sorcery. Destroy all enchantments. Furthermore, if Threshold is enabled, instead destroy all enchantments and then return to play all cards in your graveyard destroyed this way. Threshold is enabled when we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard, which will be easy due to Victor's Surveil 2. And with that we can also re-trigger Victor again by having a bunch of ETBs from our enchantments. And now let's talk about a few flicker mechanics that we can use for our creatures or for our other non-land permanents. We play Ephemerate, a 1 mana instant. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it also has Rebound, which means that at the beginning of your next upkeep you can cast a spell for free. Ephemerate is a great spell to protect your creatures, but it can also be used in a proactive way to generate more value for you by flickering creatures with powerful ETB effects. We want to flash in Felia, Exobrown Shepherd, a 2 mana 2/2 with flash, and when it attacks, exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control, and if it entered under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Felia. This attack trigger will allow you to flicker your enchantments, and there are definitely a few in this deck that will give you another ETB trigger. We play Scroll Shift, a 3 mana instant, exile up to one target artifact, creature or enchantment you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you also draw a card. Again, remember that all of these flicker effects will also give you another eerie trigger with Victor, so every flicker is powerful value for you. We play Nurturing Pixie, a 1 mana 1/1 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, return up to one target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, and if a permanent was returned this way, put a 1/1 counter on Nurturing Pixie. Yes, this is no flicker, but it will give you one of your enchantments back to hand so you can recast it to get another ETB trigger. We also play Cloudstone's Curio, a 3 mana artifact, and whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. By playing a bunch of enchantments in this deck, this will also allow you to bring back enchantments back to your hand, simply to recast them again and get a bunch of eerie triggers in one of your turns. Last but not least, we play Flicker of Fate, a 2 mana instant, exile target creature or enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Another helpful flicker effect that will make you re-enter one of your enchantments, or it can also be used to protect one of your creatures. And now I will present a few combos that we will play in this deck, and for those combos it is important to know the following cards. Balmurk Leech, a 2 mana 2/2, and whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, each opponent loses 1 life. We also play Grim Guardian, a 3 mana 1/4, and whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. And also Hopeless Nightmare, a 1 mana enchantment, when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. When it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, scry 2, and for 3 mana we can sacrifice it. These 3 cards are important drain mechanics that we will need in this deck, but especially Hopeless Nightmare is also a great card in the early game to get a few eerie triggers and also to flicker it to get a bunch more eerie triggers. More important cards for our combo are, for example, Animate Dead, a 2 mana enchantment aura and enchant creature card in a graveyard. When Animate Dead enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchant creature card in a graveyard and gains enchant creature put onto the battlefield with Animate Dead. Return enchanted creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach Animate Dead to it. When it leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. And furthermore, enchanted creature gets -1, -0. This card is quite heavy to understand, so we also play an alternative one, Necromancy, a 3 mana enchantment, and you may cast Necromancy as though it had flash. If you cast it anytime a sorcery couldn't have been cast, the controller of the permanent it becomes sacrifices it at the beginning of the next cleanup step. When Necromancy enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature put onto the battlefield with Necromancy. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control and attach Necromancy to it. When Necromancy leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. Okay, I get it, this doesn't really make it any better, but let me just continue with the final card for this combo. We play Abdel Adrian, Gorian's Ward, a 5 mana 4/4, and when it enters, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel leaves the battlefield, and create a 1/1 White Soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. Let me summarize the combo. Either we will use Animate Dead or Necromancy to reanimate Abdel Adrian, and once Abdel hits the battlefield, we will just exile either Hopeless Nightmare or Animate Dead to make those cards leave the battlefield. That will trigger Animate Dead or Necromancy, forcing us to sacrifice Abdel Adrian, which will make Necromancy or also Animate Dead re-enter the battlefield, so we can reanimate Abdel Adrian again. With this loop we can get an infinite amount of ETB triggers of certain cards, and especially Animate Dead or Necromancy, which are enchantment cards, will trigger Balmurk Leech, Grim Guardian, or also us flickering Hopeless Nightmare will make our opponents lose life until we have won the game. Another infinite combo that we play in this deck is Altar of Dementia, a 2 mana artifact and sacrifice a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power from the top of their library into their graveyard. In combination with a card like Archon of Falling Stars, a 6 mana 4/4 with flying, this can also go infinite with a card like Necromancy or Animate Dead, because when Archon of Falling Stars dies, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we simply reanimate Archon of Falling Stars either with Animate Dead or with Necromancy, and then sacrifice it into Altar of Dementia to mill our opponents for 4 or for 3. And due to Animate Dead or Necromancy being in the graveyard at that moment when Archon of Falling Stars triggers, we can bring it back to the battlefield and reanimate Archon of Falling Stars again, to then repeat this loop over and over again until our opponents have no cards in their libraries left to make them draw from an empty library. These are the infinite combos that we want to work our way towards, and with Victor in the command zone we definitely have a very unique way of achieving these combos while we make our opponents discard a bunch of cards. Alright guys, these are cards that I would play in Victor, Valgavoth, Seneschal. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.